Ooh-wee! Oh, man. Definitely, it's been a while, but definitely got some interesting games here to recap here. Man. Oh, I don't know what to say about that, but I think one particular element is back, and we waited a long time for that. Anyway, stay tuned, as I'm going to have to find a sparring partner here, as it's time for another episode of... Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here. Welcome back to another episode of My Calgary Flames 6 here, Season 2, episode number 10 here. And yeah, it's been a while here, but the All-Star break was thrown in between there. So much more that actually a couple episodes of My Calgary Hitmen in 6 occurred. So you can see that playlist here to follow along how our junior hockey team is doing in their journey to getting towards the WHL playoffs and hopefully win the NCHL Cup here. But back with the Calgary Flames here, and speaking of the Calgary Flames, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home of the Flames, Hitman, Roughnecks and Stampeders here, just make sure you like and subscribe and follow along with that bell icon here, as this is what I mostly do, talk Calgary sports, recap games, and any stories there, and I also do some personal blogs, tend to comedy, and oh man, there was definitely a couple of games in particular that I definitely would have loved to have been there to experience it and capture that on my smartphone to share with you guys, but I wasn't at those couple of games in particular there, but I also do share experiences when I'm on holidays there, and I might even talk about anything in between there, as gotta keep things interesting here. And speaking of keeping things interesting here, well, the playoff races are definitely still getting more interesting than they need to be, because the Flames definitely have had some trouble scoring here, but there's going to be some episodes where we're going to talk about shootouts here and lots of fireworks here. So anyway, let's get going on here with this episode here, which I'll be recapping games 49 to 54 here in the 2019-20 WHL regular season here. And before I get going here, I know I saw on the Calgary Flames website here that if you recall, let's say about 6-7 weeks ago, one of our assistant general managers, Chris Snow, unfortunately got diagnosed with ALS there. It happened actually at the same time when Philadelphia Flyers player Oscar Lindblom got diagnosed with a rare disease there as well. But the Calgary Flames had a hashtag called Snowy Strong there, and if you go to the Calgary Flames website, there's /Snowy Strong there to get more information on the ALS there. That's just talking about that link there. There's nothing going my way here, and it's going for charity anyway, so hopefully Chris Snow is... So thoughts with him here. So anyway, let's recap the previous 6 games here, and I'm going to say a couple of them were definitely a lot more interesting here, and we sure have waited a damn long time for it. So before we get there, let's go all the way back to Game 49. This happened on Thursday, January the 16th here, as the Calgary Flames were continuing on their Eastern road swing here. This happened at the Scotiabank Arena. It was a 5 p.m. puck drop here, and let's say this was the second last game before the All-Star break here, and how it started off here is both teams had chances in the first period, but there was no scoring in the first period, so it was obviously nothing there. But and then Toronto looked like they had the upper hand, though, in the first period there, but no scoring report. Second period was more the same, but Calgary was able to get the first goal here, as it was Derek Ryan just past the 7.5-minute mark. And actually Calgary took a 1-0 lead after 2 periods here against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Third period was another similar effort on both sides, but Toronto was actually able to tie it up, as when Nylander on the power play just past the 8.5-minute mark. So we had a 1-1 game there, and the game stayed 1-1. So as I always say, this one needed overtime. In overtime, there was once again more chances on both sides, but nothing settled here. So this one needed a shootout here. In the shootout here, the first man up was Jason Spezza for the Toronto Maple Leafs. However, he got stopped here, and it was a similar fate for Sean Monahan for the Calgary Flames. So that was it for the first round here. Second round, it was Austin Matthews who was up for Toronto here. Was stopped for Toronto, but Matthew Tkachuk, as I'm starting to nickname him Mr. Clutch here, he actually scored for Calgary in the shootout there. So Calgary had a 1-0 lead in the shootout here. And it all came down to the stick of Mitch Marner for the Toronto Maple Leafs in the third round of the shootout here. However, he got stopped, and the Calgary Flames were able to take this one 2-1 in the shootout here for another shootout win. At this point, it was their 5th shootout win of the season here, as they were 5-0 here. Toronto had a slight shot in nets. A shot advantage here as they outshot Calgary 36-32 overall, and in overtime, Calgary actually had the slight edge, 4-3 there. So ultimately, it was Dave Riddick for Calgary who made 36 saves, or 35 saves. Well, it was Frederik Andersen for Toronto who made 31 saves. So that was the first game of this recap here. Second game of the Eastern Canadian Road Swing here. So got to game 50 here. This happened on Saturday, January 18th here. The Calgary Flames were going to wrap up their Eastern Canadian Road Swing before the All-Star break here by taking on the Ottawa Senators. That was at the Canadian Tire Centre, 2 p.m. puck drop here for some afternoon delight here. And I think I forgot to mention it the last time we played the Ottawa Senators here, but this is the 4th edition of the Battle of the Tkachuks here, whereas we got Matthew, they got Brady here. And in fact here, the referee actually made sure that both Tkachuks actually took the opening face-off there. So that was a nice touch here. And also to mention here, the previous 3 matchups, Matthew came out on top here. But as I say, this was going to wrap up the Eastern Canadian Road Swing with some afternoon delay here. And this one was definitely a frustrating one to follow as a Calgary Flames fan, because Calgary, we definitely outplayed the Ottawa Senators in the first period here. However, actually it was Ottawa that opened up the scoring here, and it was Brady Tkachuk in the second season here at the 7:15 minute mark, and Ottawa had a 1-0 lead after the first period here. Despite the fact the Calgary Flames outshot the Ottawa Senators 15-3 in the first period there, so definitely we outplayed them, but Ottawa got the 1 goal there. Second period, Calgary did continue to play Ottawa here. However, Ottawa was able to add to their lead here. First, it was Chris Tierney past the 11-minute mark, and then it was Connor Brown just before the 17-minute mark. So the Ottawa Senators had a 3-0 lead after the second period here. So Calgary definitely has had problems scoring recently here because they were shut out in Montreal. And other than the shootout there, Calgary only scored 1 goal in 65 minutes against the Toronto Maple Leafs here. And so far up to this point, they've been shut out against the Ottawa Senators here. And despite the fact that the Ottawa Senators aren't as good of a team here, they definitely put in an A-plus effort here and definitely been playing well under DJ Smith despite not having the talent here. Third period, the play was a little more balanced here, and Ottawa actually did continue to add to their lead here as Colin White made it 4-0 here just past the 5.5-minute mark. However, finally, not only the Calgary Flames scored a goal, Mark Jankowski, he finally scored a goal for the Calgary Flames, his first of the season here. It wasn't until past the 14-minute mark, so Calgary was able to cut the deficit down to 4-1 for Ottawa here. However, any comeback, well, I forget it, because Vladislav Nemestov past the 16.5-minute mark made it 5-1 for the Ottawa Senators here. Noah Hannafin was able to add one in Calgary very late here in the 18-minute mark, but the Ottawa Senators ultimately took this one to 5-2 here, so Calgary was only able to get 2 out of a possible 6 points on this Eastern Canadian Road Swing. Keep in mind that Montreal and Ottawa are long out of the playoff picture here, as I'll eventually get to the standing story here after I recap the games here. So this was the first time that Brady won over Matthew Tkachuk when they faced off each other in the NHL here. So what made this frustrating here, despite the fact that we lost 5-2 here, Calgary actually outshot the Ottawa Senators 42-21 here. So definitely we had the effort there, but definitely could not get any goals here. Ottawa, well, they obviously were led by Brady Tkachuk and Connor Brown. Each had a goal and assist here. And then when it comes to the goaltending side of the game, well, Dave Riddick only made 16 saves for Calgary here. Well, it was Marcus Hogberg who made 40 saves for the Ottawa Senators here. Maybe he's the future for the Ottawa Senators here, as Craig Anderson is definitely starting to get it up there in the age there. But As I say, Calgary only won 1-3 on this Canadian road trip, and now head into the All-Star break here. And I'll recap what happened at the All-Star game after I recap all the games and go over the standings here. And I'm just going to touch on the scores and how the Flames did in the All-Star game there. So, game 51, this happened on Tuesday, January the 28th here, as the Calgary Flames were back home at the Scotiabank Stadium. 7 p.m. puck drop here. They were taking on the St. Louis Blues here, and this was definitely a big measuring stick for the Calgary Flames, as the St. Louis Blues are one of the top teams in the league here, defending Stanley Cup champions, and may I add that we got embarrassed by the St. Louis Blues on the road there back in November here, so definitely was a tough test to get back to work after the All-Star break here. Also to note here that Calgary also recently called up Buddy Robinson from the AHL there, the Stockton Heat here. He was one of the depth player signings that we had in the offseason there. He did play a handful of games with the Ottawa Senators in his NHL career there, but Buddy Robinson was making his debut with the Calgary Flames here to add some size on the roster there, and also he actually played with Johnny Gaudreau in college there. First, so that was all that coming into the game here. However, first it was Alexander Steen that opened up the scoring for St. Louis past the 5.5 minute mark. However, Matthew Tkachuk, Mr. Clutch here, ties it up past the 10.5 minute mark. So it was 1-1 there, midway through the first period there. Then it was Sean Monahan who actually gave Calgary a 2-1 lead past the 15.5 minute mark. However, St. Louis was able to add 2 quick goals here late in the first period here. First it was David Perron in the final minute and a half here to make it 2-2. Then it was Jaden Schwartz with 44 seconds left to go in the first period here. So St. Louis took a 3-2 lead going into the first period here. However, I was definitely encouraged so far that the Flames looked like they were able to keep up with the St. Louis Blues and actually score some goals here, especially from the players that we expect to score some goals from. Second period, Calgary was able to keep up the Blues, and once again, it was Sean Monahan who scored again to tie things up past the 4.5 minute mark, so we had a 3-3 game here. And then Calgary actually was able to get a lead here as Mark Jankowski now suddenly on a goal-scoring tear here. Second goal in 2 games here, just before the 10-minute mark, and Calgary had a 4-3 lead at this point here. Calgary kept the lead 4-3 going into the third period here, so definitely things were looking encouraging here. However, it was Zach Sanford of the St. Louis Blues going into the third period. He actually scored very early in the third period, 51 seconds in fact, and it was 4-4 there, and St. Louis was seeking a lead here. However, there was no scoring for the rest of the third period here. As I always like to say, this one needed overtime. In overtime, Calgary did have the edge in play here. However, there was no scoring in the 3-3 overtime here, so this one needed a shootout here. So in the shootout here, Sean Monahan was up first for Calgary, and he missed here. And then Dave Perron did score on the first round here, so St. Louis had a 1-0 lead in the first round of the shootout here. Second round, we called on Mr. Clutch, Matthew Tkachuk here. However, he was stopped, and then Ryan O'Reilly for St. Louis did score on the shootout here to clinch the game, so ultimately the St. Louis Blues did win this one 5-4 in the shootout here. This actually was the first loss for Calgary in a shootout this season here. However, I still think I was a little more encouraged by the fact that we were able to keep up with the St. Louis Blues and score some goals here. And when it comes to the shot here, actually, St. Louis did have the slight shot advantage here by outsshooting Calgary 34-31 here overall, and Calgary did actually outshoot St. Louis 4-2 in overtime here. So Calgary was led away by Sean Monahan, who had 2 goals here, and Matthew Tkachuk had a goal and assist here. Mark Giordano and Johnny Gaudreau also chipped in with 2 assists here, so it's nice to see our regular guys that we can count on to get some offense here picking up here, because definitely we've been having problems scoring goals up to this point here. On the St. Louis side of the puck here, they were led by Zach Sanford and David Perron. Each had a goal and assist there, and Alex Pietrangelo actually also chipped in with 2 assists here. It was actually Cam Talbot who started in net for Calgary this game. He made 30 saves for Calgary, while Jordan Binnington, the goalie that came out of nowhere and led into the Cup last year, he made 27 saves for St. Louis there. So that was game 51. Now, the next 2 games were Battle of Alberta's here, and I'm going to say it's safe to say the Battle of Alberta is back. And the fact that wouldn't it just be beautiful if we have a Calgary Edmonton playoff series this year, as both teams are, you could say relevant and, are both competitive here. So let's get going to game 52 here. This happened on Wednesday, January the 29th here. The Calgary Flames were up in Edmonton here at Rogers Place the next night, 8 p.m. puck drop here. This was the third round of the Battle of Alberta, and remember the time when Matthew Tkachuk and Zach Kassian, when Matthew Tkachuk hit Zach Kassian there, and then Zach Kassian drove him to the ice? He got suspended for 2 games for there. Well, those 2-game suspension was up here, and he was eligible to come back into the lineup here, and indeed, Zach Kassian was back in the lineup for the Edmonton Oilers here. And some people were anticipating, is there going to be a Matthew Tkachuk, Zach Kassian round 2 here? Well, let's see here. First, Calgary opened up scoring very early here as Elias Lindholm's 21st here in the opening minute. Made it 1-0 here for Calgary. That seems to have been the theme here with Calgary Edmonton games, is someone scores early here, and it was Elias Lindholm here. Then some fireworks on the ice here, as expected with this rivalry here, and especially been heating up here. First, Sean Monahan. Yes, Sean Monahan and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They first passed, fought. Yes, I know, ridiculous. Those 2 guys fighting. This past the 16-minute mark was started with a coincidental slashing and cross-checking here. The Battle of Alberta is back with Sean Monahan and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins are fighting here. And then the main event happened 24 seconds later, so that was the warm-up. But the main event, the heavyweight matchup, happened 24 seconds later as Zach Kassian and Matthew Tkachuk did fight for round 2 here. And definitely was beautiful to see. I mean, it was expected to happen, especially what happened the last game there. It was a tight game here. So after all that, Calgary still actually had a 1-0 lead after the first period here with those couple fights to highlight this Battle of Alberta here. Second period, Edmonton actually got on the board as Kyler Yamamoto scores just past the 5.5 minute mark. So it was 1-1 there. And then Andrew Mangiapane for Calgary puts it back up with the 2-1 lead here at the 13-minute mark. And then former Flame, Alex Chiasson, ties it up for Edmonton just past the 14.5 minute mark. However, Andrew Mangiapane scored his second of the game in the final minute of the second period there. So Calgary had a 3-2 lead going into the third period here. We should also add in here that on Alex Chiasson's goal here, actually it was Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl both at the same time assisted on that goal and collected their 50th assist of the season there. So they definitely are led by those 2 guys, the Edmonton Oilers there. Third period, it was very defensive-minded after the excitement in the first 2 periods, all the fights in the first period and the goals in the second period here. Edmonton was able to tie it up past the 12-minute mark as Mac Benny made it 3-3 there, and it stayed that way. So guess what? This one needed overtime here. And in overtime, both teams had a couple shots, so nothing to say here. So for the third time in 4 games, the Calgary Flames needed a shootout here. And then in the shootout here, it was Ryan Nugent-Hopkins who was up first for the Edmonton Oilers there, but he missed while Sean Monahan actually scored in the first round of the shootout there, so it was 1-0 there. Second round, actually Connor McDavid, he missed on his shot in the second round. Then Matthew Tkachuk also was stopped here, so the third round of the shootout, everything came down to the stick of Leon Draisaitl earlier, and to start the pot here a little, Leon Draisaitl was stopped here, and Calgary won this one 4-3 to shootout here. They actually clinched the season series in the process there by winning the first 3 games of the Battle of Alberta here, which, could come in handy in a tiebreak here. But where the pot got stirred here is that after when Leon Draisaitl was stopped by Dave Riddick, he kind of poked a puck there. Dave Riddick kind of did that stick, twirl there, and definitely didn't go over well there. And actually during this game, there was also another incident where Mark Giordano and Connor McDavid also had a little hit there where, I know if you recall last year, Mark Giordano and Connor McDavid was in a little bit of an accidental collision there that Connor McDavid needed to get surgery on his knee there, but he definitely is looking fine now. But actually, there was some controversy with that too. So definitely, and then plus the fight with Matthew Tkachuk, Zach Cassian, that's everyone was waiting for there. So definitely a lot happened in the third edition of the Battle of Alberta here. Edmonton did outshoot the Calgary Flames 34-28 here. Each team had 2-2 in overtime here. Calgary was led by Andrew Mangiapane with 2 goals there. Edmonton was led by Liam Draisaitl, who made 2 assists there. So when it comes to goaltending, it was Dave Riddick, who made 31 saves for Calgary. And got the stick flip on the shootout winner there. Mike Smith made 25 saves for Edmonton there. So that was round 3 here. And guess what? Round 4 happened on Game 53 on Saturday, February the 1st here. But this time at the Scotiabank Saddledome in Calgary. 8 p.m. puck drop. Hockey Night Canada, Battle of Alberta, and it's heating up. And oh boy, this one definitely has really got me frothing that I really, really want a playoff series. It would just be beautiful. However, the 4th edition was definitely the most interesting one yet in many years. However, to keep up with the theme of scoring early, well, it was the Edmonton Oilers' turn to be doing that. First, he got on the board quickly. Kailer Yamamoto actually scored at 29 seconds in. And then public enemy number 1 here in Calgary, Zach Cassian. He actually scored 36 seconds later. So just like that, Edmonton was already up 2-0 here, just barely in the opening minute here. And then Buddy Robinson, remember I mentioned him when he made his NHL debut for the Calgary Flames, or his Calgary Flame debut. He was called up here, played the last couple games here. He actually scored his first with the Calgary Flames and up scoring for Calgary just past the 12 and a half minute mark. So Edmonton lead was cut down to 2-1 here. Then on the power play, Connor McDavid, once again showing he's definitely one of the best players in the league and generation talent here. Past the 15.5 minute mark, made it 3-1 at that point. Then just before the 16 minute mark, Buddy Robinson was involved again, but this time he was fighting with Johor Kara for Edmonton there to keep the spirit of the Battle of Alberta going here. So after the first period, Edmonton had a 3-1 lead here. Then the second period, well, Connor McDavid definitely struck again as he scored past the 3 minute mark. So Edmonton had a 4-1 lead at this point here. So this game looked like it could be going away to the Edmonton Oilers here. Then Calgary actually was able to get a couple goals to get back into this one. First, Matthew Tkachuk past the 4.5 minute mark, and then Elias Lindholm past the 10 minute mark. So about the midway point of the second period here, now it was a 4-3 game for the Edmonton Oilers here. So things were starting to look a little better, and maybe the Calgary Flames were starting to get momentum here. Despite the fact that they were not playing this well up to this point here. After the start of the first period here, the second period, the Flames definitely did not play well, and the Edmonton Oilers definitely paid the price. Because it was Ryan Hughes-Jacobkins actually a minute later and a half later after when the Calgary Flames made it 4-3 there, made it 5-3 here. And then Caleb Jones for the Edmonton Oilers made it 6-3 here. Just before the 16-minute mark, and Edmonton continued to outplay Calgary big time here. Splitting the defense here, I know Noah Fanafin and Oliver Shillington definitely stuck out for the wrong reasons. They definitely both had tough games here. And then let's say there were a lot to talk about here in the second period at the, let's say the 1936 minute mark with 24 seconds to go in the second period here. Things definitely got crazy and silly here. First it was Dave Riddick, he covered the puck to freeze the play there. However, Sam Gagner pokes at Dave Riddick, and this is where all hell broke loose here, and definitely was the spark that ignited the TNC here, I should say. First, it was Cam Talbot and Sam Gannett that were engaged in the roughing here. And then Mark Giordano decided to come in and rough up with Sam Gagner there for the poke, and starting off Cam Talbot here. With all that fight happening, Matthew Tkachuk for Calgary, yeah, he likes to get in the middle of everything too. This time he was dancing with Ethan Bear for Edmonton in that scrum there. And off to the side there during the stoppage there, yeah, TJ Brody and Gaten Hawes there. They were pushing and shoving a bit there, but they weren't really involved in the play here in a light scrum here. But what takes the cake here is that Mike Smith, who used to play for these guys, and then he decided to sign with the Edmonton Oilers when we decided to move on with him. He actually left the crease, and you get a penalty for that. He went to center ice and did the Ken Dryden "I'm waiting for you" pose here. And definitely what made this beautiful was after when Cam Talbot was done, dancing a little with Sam Gagner there as Mark Giordano was roughing him up, and then he had the Ethan Bear and the Matthew Tkachuk fight there. It was actually Darnell Nurse that kind of pointed to Cam Talbot and say, "Yeah, Smith is waiting for you there." And what highlighted this whole thing is Mike Smith for Edmonton and Cam Talbot for Calgary got loose and started fighting right on center ice here as both goalies were fighting here. That definitely, really showed that the Battle of Alberta is back. Now, who would have thought that when these two guys decided to switch sides, just the way how it worked out in the Battle of Alberta? I mean, technically, Cam Talbot finished last season with the Philadelphia Flyers here, but he was more synonymous playing for the Edmonton Oilers here. And when we decided to move on from Mike Smith, we signed Cam Talbot here. Who would have thought those two would have literally fought? Oh man, that was beautiful. This is really frothing. That this is the Battle of Alberta I remember. Back, when I was a little kid. I mean, we had some good teams too, but Edmonton, they always had their dynasty teams led by Gretzky, Curry, Messier, and then, they had Martin McSorley, Dave Semenko. Hunter Semenko, it was definitely that. But, man. So all this happened with 24 seconds to left in the second period here. And as hockey fans here, we like to, rat on the officials here and make bad calls there. This is where I actually applaud them. Because despite all the silliness happening and all the stuff you got to sort out from all the little dancing that was going on here, the referees decided to make the call to tell both benches to go to the locker room. And I think this is where I give them credit here, because after all the fighting and that happened here, I think if they decided to run out the period, going into the third period and drop the puck there, I think you would have had a Calgary-Vancouver January 2014 line brawl there where everybody would have been dancing there, because maybe both teams would decide to put up their, tougher players here. So there were still 24 seconds to go in the second period here, so they were going to run out the 24 seconds in the third period there to carry it over there. But man, what a. This is masking the fact that Calgary looked terrible and definitely was outplayed in the second period here. And we were down 6-3 at this point, but that was almost secondary here. I'm talking about more what's happened in the final 24 seconds of the second period here than the actual game itself. Oh yeah, speaking of that, I guess there's still more of the game to go, or as the old joke goes, I went to a hockey game, a boxing match broke out, or maybe this was a WWE wrestling in its heyday with many wrestling, but this was the Battle of Alberta I remember, and you can maybe start saying this is the best rivalry in the NHL right now, and oh please, hockey gods, make them meet in the playoffs. Oh, that'd be beautiful. I can dream. So after all that silliness here, the third period, while Mikko Koskinen was in net for Edmonton here, and David Riddick came back in the net here. Actually, he started in the game here. However, he was chased after Connor McDavid's second goal in the second period there. So, because Mike Smith actually started for Edmonton here, but those two goalies, they switched sides and they fought. Okay, now let's get back to the game here. So past the 11-minute mark, well, there was a little more coincidental roughing penalties here as Sam Bennett for Calgary and Patrick Russell for Edmonton took coincidental roughing there, and then pretty much the blowout continued here. Sam Gagner for Edmonton, he stirred the pot here. Then he scored a goal here to make it 7-3 for Edmonton. Past the 13-minute mark, and then just under 2 minutes to go here, we had enough silliness here. Well, how about might as well just put the ice in the cake that this game literally had everything here. As we're just under 2 minutes to go here, Matthew Tkachuk did stir things up a bit. Well, he never does that. But he actually did in this case. First, he took out Gaten Haas on a breakaway here. Then he was awarded a penalty shot here. However, before the penalty shot, Matthew Tkachuk and Alex Chason took misconduct penalties there. And they were both done for the game here. And there was Gaten Haas here, who, he was dancing a little with TJ Brody here. He did score the penalty shot goal to make it 8-3 for Edmonton. And Actually, let's forget the fact that the Calgary Flames terribly lost 8-3 in this game here. And the fact that Edmonton outshot Calgary 49-26 here. Including, I think it was 24-6 in the second period there. But all that silly stuff definitely highlighted here. But it was definitely a throwback to the Battle of Alberta. And we need a playoff series, finally. It's been 29 years. If the Winnipeg Blue Bombers were able to get their Grey Cup in 29 years, damn it, we need a Calgary-Edmonton playoff series for the first time in 29 years. And that brought back those memories. Although, unfortunately, we were on the wrong end of that more often than not, because we had a damn good team, but the Edmonton Oilers, when half your team was full of Hall of Famers and generational talent there, it was tough for anyone to compete there, and if the playoff format was differently there, we wouldn't have been meeting in the second round here. But what a throwback there, and I also got to throw in that those jerseys. Yes, we need them full time. So who led the way for the Calgary Flames here, despite the fact we lost 8-3 here? Mark Giordano was the only one at the multi-point game. He had 2 assists here. Edmonton, well, we were led by Connor McDavid. He had 2 goals, and actually Leon Draisaitl, he chipped in with 4 assists here. Taylor Adamoto and Gaten Haas, they each had a goal and assist there. And Oscar Klefbom, he also had 2 assists here. Then when it comes to the goaltending here, well, David Redden made 22 saves, and Cam Talbot made 19 saves for Calgary here. And then Mike Smith, he made 15 saves for Edmonton, and then Mikko Koskinen made 8 saves in relief there. After when Talbot and Smith decided, or it was Mike Smith that came to center ice, and oh man, I mean the secondary is we lost badly, and it was still tough to take. And I'm not drinking anymore, and the old me would definitely be cracking open something to drink here, but I'm trying to get healthier, and I just don't drink anymore. So, but hopefully there'll be a Battle of Alberta in the playoffs here. And speaking of that, these guys don't play again until, I got the date right, Saturday, April the 4th here. Last day of the regular season. Oh man, that's 2 months away. That's too long. And who the heck knows what could be on the line that day. And please, hockey gods. Although Calgary's precariously holding on to their playoff position, but oh please, we need a playoff series. Alright, enough of that. Let's wrap up this 6-game segment here before I get into other things. Game 54, this happened on Tuesday, February the 4th here, as the Calgary Flames were taking on the San Jose Sharks here. This was a 7 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome here, and hopefully Calgary was looking to rebound from being badly beaten and all the silliness here. There was actually definitely some line juggling as well here, because definitely our defense definitely had a rough game here. First period, Calgary did actually come out swinging here, but they couldn't find the back of the net, which definitely has been a problem here in the last while here. No score in the report in the first period here. However, one player you thought, well, this is definitely why we brought him here, despite the stinky contract, was Milan Lucic. However, actually Milan Lucic actually fought Barclay Boudreau for the San Jose Sharks here. I wonder if this is a response to the heat that he took from not engaging as much in the previous game here. And I have heard from comments when I commented about the James Neal trade, and I also work with an Oilers fan here, that he also says the same thing, that one of the criticisms of Milan Lucic is he gets too friendly with the players there and doesn't engage as much there. Maybe that was the case there, but yeah, I mean, it was a tough game for everybody. I mean, Buddy Robinson was the only Flame that really showed up against the previous game there, but you were wondering, why wasn't I mentioning Milan Lucic here? But I guess also the Flames were trying to not get, too fighting for just the sake of fighting here, but that was just a what if. That's what came to many Flames fans' minds on this game after what happened the previous game there. Second period, Calgary actually did open up the scoring as Johnny Gaudreau got his 14th, just past the opening minute mark, so Calgary actually had a 1-0 lead here. However, it was Brent Burns, Jack Link's guy, the star defenseman there, did tie things up 3 minutes later, so we had a 1-1 game here. And then Evander Kane, he certainly seems like have a big game against the Calgary Flames 4 minutes later, just past the 8-minute mark. So San Jose had a 2-1 lead here at this point here. There was no more scoring to report afterwards, so San Jose took a 2-1 lead going into the third period here. However, things were definitely getting a little worse here for the Calgary Flames as got some bad news here as Mark Giordano left the game with appears with a foot injury. As of this recording, there was no timetable or word on the extent of the injury here. As actually, he was getting tested with an MRI in practice here, but it definitely could be devastating and might change Calgary's game plan going into the trade deadline here if we are without our captain and our best defenseman here for an extended period of time here, especially with the playoff races here. But yeah, that was definitely tough news here, and that insult to injury. Calgary just definitely didn't show their best effort to get back in it here. In fact, it was Kevin LeBlanc for San Jose. Past the 7.5 minute mark, makes it 3-1 for San Jose here. Now, the one thing to note here, not the goal here, is that when Brent Burns scored and Kevin LeBlanc scored, Joe Thornton for the San Jose Sharks actually collected 2 more assists on that, and that actually puts him up to 1,500 points on his NHL career here. And Joe Thornton actually is only the 14th player in NHL history to record 1,500 points. So congratulations to you, Joe Thornton, on 1,500 points in the NHL there. It's definitely remarkable to only be 14 other players have done that here. And keep in mind, he's 40 years old now, and he was the first overall pick by then, the Boston Bruins, all the way back in 1997 here. And definitely isn't much scoring there, but he still has the ability to set him up here. He's known as a setup guy here, but 1,500 points is definitely no small feat, and he's a first ballot Hall of Famer whenever he decides to retire. So I got to give my congratulations to Joe Thornton here. But getting back to the game here, Calgary's offensive troubles continued, and San Jose was able to hold on to the 3-1 lead, and they won this game 3-1 here. And definitely was a tough one to take here, as the San Jose Sharks are they're definitely falling off the playoff race here, and this was definitely a game we definitely needed here. And fortunately, we didn't take it here. Calgary did actually outshoot the San Jose Sharks 31-26 here, but it seemed like after the first period there, Calgary kind of just went down here. San Jose, well, we were led by Joe Thornton with his 2 assists there. That put him up to the 1,500 point mark here on his NHL career. It was Dave Riddick who made 23 saves for Calgary. Well, it was Aaron Dell here, actually. He's a local guy here. He made 30 saves for the San Jose Sharks here, and yeah, it's definitely a tough one to drop here against non-playoff teams here. So where do we stand after 54 games here? Well, the Calgary Flames have a record of 27 wins, 21 losses, and 6 overtime shootout losses here for 60 points here. He puts us 4th in the Pacific Division, but you could say we're still only 5 points behind the Vancouver Canucks for first in the Pacific here. This also puts us in the second wildcard spot of the Western Conference here, which is the final playoff spot here, but we're only 3 points ahead of Winnipeg, Nashville, and Chicago here, so we're going to have to keep looking behind here. So before I get to the All-Star Game bonus here, let's just quickly go over the standings here, shall we, because things are ridiculously tight here. And as of this recording here, so let's look at the standings here. So in the Western Conference here, the top 3 in the Pacific Division, you got Vancouver. They have 65 points after 54 games here. Second place, you got the Edmonton Oilers. They have 62 points in 53 games. And around at the top 3, you got the Vegas Golden Knights. They have 61 points in 55 games here. Then in the Central Division here, you got the St. Louis Blues are in first. They got 72 points in 54 games. Followed by the Dallas Stars. They have 65 points in 53 games. Then they're out of the top 3 in the Central. You got the Colorado Avalanche. They have 64 points in 51 games here. Then the 2 wild cards right now. The first wild card goes to the Arizona Coyotes. They have 61 points in 55 games here. And then the second wild card, which is the final wild card's playoffs position in the Western Conference, there's the Calgary Flames. They have 60 points in 54 games here. As I mentioned, we're going to have to keep a watch out for 3 teams here, because the Nashville Predators, they have 57 points, but they've only played 52 games there. So if they won those 2 games in the end, that would be 1 more point than the Calgary Flames have. Chicago Blackhawks, they have 57 points in 53 games, so they're only 3 points behind. And the Winnipeg Jets, they have 57 points in 54 games here. So likely for those three teams, they're all in the Central here. They're likely, unless they go on a nice run here, they're 7 points behind Colorado to get in the top three here. So wild card would have to be their fate. While the Pacific Division, 5 points still separates first to fifth here. So actually, I should say Calgary's actually fifth in the Pacific Division, not fourth here. So that's the Western Conference here. To look out east here in the Atlantic Division here, Boston's first. They have 76 points in 54 games. Now the Tampa Bay Lightning, I think they're going to be catching up and maybe take first in the Atlantic here. They have 71 points in 53 games. Third place, you actually got the Florida Panthers. They have 64 points in 52 games here. Now if you look at the Metropolitan Division here, you got the Washington Capitals. They have 77 points in 54 games. Then the Pittsburgh Penguins, they have 71 points in 52 games. And then you got the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're actually in the top three. They have 67 points in 54 games here. And now in the wild cards in the Eastern Conference here, the New York Islanders have 66 points in 51 games. And the Philadelphia Flyers are in the second wild card, last playoff spot for the Eastern Conference here. They have 65 points in 53 games here. So definitely the Eastern Conference is definitely stronger than the Western Conference this year. Teams outside looking in, I think only two teams might have a shot here. Well, you got the Toronto Maple Leafs. They have 53 points in 53 games. And then you got the Carolina Hurricanes. They have 63 points in 53 games here. So they're only 2 points out behind the Philadelphia Flyers there. And they're also 1 point from Florida to get into the top three there. So, because I think Montreal's too far back because they have 55 points. 55 games, they have 57 points there. And then when I look at the Western Conference here, I think the Minnesota Wild, they have 54 points in 52 games here. But when you're 6 points behind and past the All-Star break here, you're tempting fate here. So when it comes to playoff positioning here, right now, you would have the Washington Capitals. They have the best record in the Eastern Conference here. They would be taking on the second wild card, the Philadelphia Flyers here. So Washington, Philly, playoff series will be fun. And then you got the Boston Bruins. They'll be taking on the New York Islanders here. So that's the two top seeds there. Then the 2-3 here, well, you'll have the Tampa Bay Lightning hosting the Florida Panthers here. How about a Battle of Florida? That doesn't have the same ring and intensity as the Battle of Alberta, but you could potentially see a Battle of Florida here. And then Pittsburgh-Columbus. Oh, another Pittsburgh-Columbus there. So that could be the Eastern Conference potential matchups here. So out west here, the St. Louis Blues have the top record in the Western Conference here. They actually would be taking on the Calgary Flames if the playoffs were to start right now, and it would definitely be in tough there. That's why I figure avoid the second wild card here, from my point of view. Vancouver Canucks are first in the Pacific Division here. They would be hosting the Arizona Coyotes here. That'd be an interesting matchup here with two young teams at it. Then you got Edmonton hosting Vegas. And you got Dallas and Colorado here. It almost seems like Dallas and Colorado are almost destined to play each other, looking like right now, kind of back in the late 1990s there, if they're not playing Detroit there. So, yeah, that's the standing story here. So let's quickly look at the All-Star game here. So I'm just going to go over the events and the games and how the Flames players did in the All-Star game here. So the All-Star game obviously was in St. Louis here, and definitely became a family affair there because Keith Tkachuk, the father of both Matthew and Brady, lives in St. Louis there, and actually both Tkachuks actually wound up going to the All-Star Games participants there. So definitely was a family affair here. So on Friday, January the 24th here, this was the skills competition, and then you had the elite 3-on-3 women's hockey game here. So first, the skills competition. The Bridgestone NHL fastest skater, believe it or not, I'm actually surprised it was Matthew Barzal for the New York Islanders actually won this one. I would have given that one to Connor McDavid here, but he actually just eked out Connor McDavid in 13.175 seconds here. And then the next event was the Bud Light NHL Save Streak. Well, that went to the hometown Jordan Binnington for the St. Louis Blues here. He made 10 saves. Then the Honda NHL Accuracy Shooting. Actually, that went to Jake Slavin for the Carolina Hurricanes. He did that in 9.505 seconds here. And then the SAP, hardest slap shot here, went to Shea Weber of the Montreal Canadiens. 106.5 miles per hour here. Then the Gatorade NHL Shooting Stars. It was Patrick Kane from the Chicago Blackhawks. He collected 22 points, including 2 in overtime here. So I'm not quite sure how that went. I didn't actually watch any of the games here. And then the late 3-on-3 women's hockey actually happened that Friday night here. It was the Canadian All-Stars, 2-1 over the American All-Stars here. So that was all the festivities on Friday here. And then on Saturday here was the actual games here. I was at the Rough House taking on the Roughnecks game, so I'm just going to recap the scores here. So this all happened at the Enterprise Center at St. Louis, Missouri. So game 1, you had the Eastern Conference teams. It was the Atlantic Division that beat the Metropolitan 9-5 here. So the Atlantic get to move on to game 3. And then game 2, you had the Pacific Division beating the Central Division 10-5 here. So that sets up the final there. The winning team shares $1 million here. The Pacific Division actually beat the Atlantic Division 5-4 in the All-Star game here. I should also mention that it was both Kachucks were playing each other here, and Matthew came out on top here. Now, speaking of the Flames here, well, in game 2, this was the Pacifica Central game. Actually, Matthew Tkachuk, and it was two 10-minute periods of 3-on-3, so I say the All-Star Game is just a glorified 3-on-3 pawn hockey tournament, but Matthew Tkachuk, he actually picked up 2 goals and 2 assists in Game 2 there. And Mark Giordano had a goal and assist there, and Dave Riddick, he actually made 9 saves and got credited with the win there. And then Game 3, well, Matthew Tkachuk, he had 2 assists. Mark Giordano had 1 assist there, and Dave Riddick, he only needed to make 4 saves and got credited with the win there too. So David Riddick actually had a good All-Star game, but the MVP actually went to David Pastrnak of the Boston Bruins there. So that's all I'm going to talk about the All-Star game here. But yeah, so looked at the standings here. Yeah, definitely 2 games definitely stood out for good old throwback reasons here. So now this will be the final part of the video where I'll take a look ahead here to the next 6 games here, and I'm saying looking at the schedule here, there's definitely some points to be had here but Calgary didn't seem to capitalize on points to be had here, but there's definitely going to be some tough games here. As game 55, this will be on Thursday, February 6th here. Look at that. The Calgary Flames will be taking on the Nashville Predators. That's definitely going to be a big game there, as the Nashville Predators are just behind us here with a couple games in hand. As that will be at the Scotiabank Saddledome, that'll be 7 p.m. puck drop here, so that's a big swing game there. And then game 56, Saturday, February 8th here, could we see maybe a potential first-round matchup? The Calgary Flames go on the road to take on the Vancouver Canucks. That'll be at the Rogers Arena, 8 p.m. puck drop on Hockey Night Canada here. Could we have another fight-filled game there? Because Calgary just has a heated rivalry with Vancouver as well there, and definitely had some emotional series with Vancouver as well there. So something to keep in mind there. And then on game 57 here, as Calgary will be going to California here. As on Monday, February the 10th here, the Calgary Flames will be in San Jose at the SCP Center, 8:30 puck drop here. Definitely need to take advantage of the California here, because all the 3 California teams there, at once upon a time there, was a tough road trip here, but all 3 California teams are so far out of it here that we need to take advantage of it here. So that's the first game here. And then on game 58, Wednesday, February 12th here, the Calgary Flames will be taking on the Los Angeles Kings in Los Angeles here. Staples Center, 8 p.m. puck drop here. Matthew Tkachuk is going to be enemy number 1 in that city now. Could there be a Matthew Tkachuk Drew Doughty dance again? Who knows? But that's definitely another sideline for that game. And then on game 59, this happens on Thursday, February the 13th here. 13, Anaheim. The Calgary Flames will be taking on the Anaheim Ducks at the dreaded Honda Center there. We still haven't totally crushed the curse there, but we have won at least a couple of games here in the last couple of years here, but there's still the remnants, the stink of it is still there. Just felt that, how we can't seem to ever win in Anaheim here. And then to wrap up the next episode here, episode 11 here, game 60 here, on Saturday, February the 15th. Another team that Calgary is definitely got to keep an eye on the Chicago Blackhawks. This will be back at home at the Scotiabank Saddledome, 8 p.m. puck drop on Hockey Night in Canada here. So there's definitely some points to be had here as Calgary in the next 6 games here. They're only playing one team that is in a playoff spot right now, and that we're looking to maybe still got to keep the eyes on the Central Division here, or the Pacific Division here, so we don't have to take on the St. Louis Blues in the first round here. But we got Nashville and Chicago as well. 2 teams that are just behind us here, so definitely the Calgary Flames have some work cut out for them still, and you got to remember the trade deadline is on Monday, February the 24th here, and I still think the Calgary Flames need to start looking at possibly looking at the trade market here and maybe shake things up a little. Not too much there like I did 10 years ago when I did those trade retrospects, because I don't think those trade retrospects didn't bring back too many good memories with when I talked about the Dion Phaneuf-Finelli opening trade there. So I do have my trade retrospects there, and if any trades happen that's major enough, I'll make a video about that if or when it happens between now and February 24th here. So yeah, that's my Calgary Flames in 6 here. So if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey here, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, just make sure you hit like, subscribe, and follow along with that bell icon here. And this, I gotta say, is definitely one of the more interesting My Calgary Flames in 6 that I've done. I've only been doing it for 2.5 seasons now, but the Battle of Alberta is back here, and please, I want a playoff series. I also want those retro jerseys back full time too. And speaking of that, I've decided to make a video here in the next couple weeks where I'm going to rank these jerseys. Where do these guys rank, or where do those pedestal jerseys rank, or all the other jerseys that we wore, including the All-Star games. I'll make that video, and hopefully I'll get that up in a couple weeks there. So I mostly do Calgary sports, but I also do personal blogs and attempt at comedy, and I'll share everything else on my smartphone there. I wish I definitely was at those Battle of Alberta games where Cam Talbot and Mike Smith literally fought. That was beautiful. And hearing all the commentators in any different languages, they thought it was beautiful too. And I know that the Oilers broadcaster said, "Oh boy, the Battle of Alberta's back. We waited for that for 3 decades." And yeah, we need a playoff series. And it would just be beautiful. But I can dream. We need still lots of work to do to get into the playoffs first here. So if that sounds like anything you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, make sure you like, subscribe. I also got my other social media links down below there. So as I say, go Flames go, as I cheer for these guys on this side of the Battle of Alberta. Yeah, we won the season series, but we definitely lost the fights the last game there. But oh man, both fans, no matter which side of the Battle of Alberta on, we want a playoff series, and I'm ready here. So as I say, I'll see you in the next video here. Hopefully I'll have some better news in terms of actually getting some wins and separating ourselves from those teams behind us there. So I'll see you in the next video.